Our top focus right now is a crucial decision that has been taken by the current government. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has now announced that Port Blair, the capital city of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, has been renamed to Sri Vijaya Puram. Amidst all the news and everything that's happening, it's important, viewers, to take a second to also understand why this move has been made by the Indian government, and that's only possible if we look at the rich history of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Port Blair was named after Archibald Port. Archibald Blair was a lieutenant sergeant in the Bombay Marines under the British Navy. He was the first surveyor of the islands, and he made a thorough report, a very detailed account, which he then submitted to the East India Company. I'm talking about 1778 to 1779. The East India Company was so impressed with his records that in his honor, they named the capital city of the islands Port Blair. Over the course of history and the many centuries that followed, Port Blair, and specifically the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, served as a safe harbour for the British Navy as well as the East India Company to keep a check on Malay pirates. And then eventually, when the freedom struggle in India blossomed, it was actually used as a remote island jail for many freedom fighters, including Veer Savarkar. Today, Union Home Minister Amit Shah has made an announcement that in another crucial step to get rid of India's colonial imprint, the government has decided that Port Blair will be renamed as Sri Vijaya Puram. Why exactly is it that they've chosen the specific name Sri Vijaya Puram, and what does this really mean for India that is in the process of finding itself while striking a balance between our colonial past and also understanding who we are and what we stand for? I take this very pertinent conversation forward. With me on the broadcast is Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee. She's a former diplomat. We have Major General Brijesh Kumar. We also have Commander Dr. Bhushan Diwan, and we have Ravi Bhatt, historian, with us on the broadcast. Let me begin this conversation, if I can, with Major General Brijesh Kumar. Major General Brijesh Kumar, if you could, just for the benefit of our viewers, explain what exactly, sir, was the significance of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands for the British that had colonized not only India but also the island territories around it. What was the role that the island also played during the Second World War, and what really is the history, sir?
Devika, first of all, let me say a few things about the Andaman Nicobar Island and its heritage, because it's not only forgetting our colonial past, but also your second point you mentioned, finding a feet amongst ourselves. If you recollect, old heritage helps us discover us and add value to the next generation which follow. Coming back to your main question, Andaman and Nicobar Island in today's context are also more important than what it was in the past. It's a formidable aircraft carrier base for us, spreading thousands of kilometers plus north to south. Coming back to the heritage, the first time the Cholas, who ruled in the late 10th, 11th century, they had their forward base at Andaman for their conquest of Sri Vijaya Puram. Sri Vijaya Puram generally then was Indonesia, Malaysia, and parts of Borneo. We all know the entire name of the Southeast Asia is called Indochina. Obviously, the influence of India ruled much stronger there, and therefore the name Indochina. So we are trying to rediscover history from the olden times. A point here between the British, though Lieutenant Blair found it or discovered it in the late 19th century, late 18th century, the Britishers themselves had lost interest into it in the earlier 19th century. The interest came forward a little later. A Kala Pani as we know,
Yes.
and B, yes, to sustain some effort in the Second World War in the Southeast
But
Asian.
Major Brajesh Kumar, if you could also just help shed light on the significance of Kala Pani for our viewers. So the fact that there was a full flourishing cells that were created, a full flourishing jail system that was created on this remote island that was used by the British to incarcerate several Indian freedom fighters.
Yes, Kala Pani has a very, very black kind of a mark against the our freedom struggle, and all the hardliners, shall we say, from the British side, all those who believed in positive action to get rid of the British, what British did, either they killed them, either they sent them to gallows, or send them to a forlorn place. Imagine sending them to a jail in Andaman, in Port Blair, approximately 1,500 miles away from the Indian shore, so the prisoners could not escape. And in Port Blair, since they were inscribed as jail prisoners of a very high order, they were tortured, kept in solitary confinement, and ill-treated. And there we had those stories of Veer Savarkar and many others from all over India who would have perished. And after independence, fortunately and rightly, we created a sort of a memorial to commemorate their hardship, and also named this as Subhash Chandra Bose Memorial very aptly, because he also laid the foundation, shall I say, during the Second World War with the Indian Army and put the flag of the Indian nation first in Port Blair.
Right. Absolutely. I'll come to you in just a moment, sir. Ravi Bhatt, historian, also with us on the broadcast. Mr. Bhatt, if you can help shed some light on why exactly the government of India has chosen Sri Vijaya Puram as the new name for Port Blair, because there is, of course, a crucial piece of history that a lot of us may not be aware of. Major Brajesh Kumar just had also spoken briefly about it, about the fact that Sri Vijaya was a territory that was in a way conquered by the Chola Empire. If you can just help shed some further light on that, what really is the story of Sri Vijaya Puram?
Coming back to your first question, the why it is being renamed, let me tell you that is one of the moves which we all should appreciate, because that's the first thing to decolonize the mindset of Indians, who even after 75 years of independence still often tend to think in the same mindset which they used to think before 1947. Because as we understand, like any individual, if you keep on reminding all the positive things about yourself, you can better plan your future, you can look for a better future. The same thing exactly happens in case of a nation also. The more we keep on reminding the darker side of, a humiliating side of our race, our country, our people, the more we will demoralize. And so it is a very, very, very admirable move on the part of the government of India. As we understand, this particular Port Blair was named after the Archibald Port Blair, who had joined the Indian Navy, British Indian Navy, way back in 1771, and he had first discovered is the wrong word, I think probably. He had chance to go there, and he found it for Britishers. This port was there, and he has named it after the Port Cornwallis, who was the British commander-in-chief that time. But later on, again, it was renamed after this man only, the Port Blair. And as we understand, as our major was also mentioning very rightly, that it is a case of pride for us that the Cholas had their naval base here, and to conquer the Indonesia and the other island nearby, the expedition had started from here only. Number three, which is more important, is apart from this history, our glorious history of our also.
Yes.
Our history is a glorious history. Chola history is glorious. We wanted to, while the history of British, it should be condemned, and it is condemned these days all over the world, because the way the humiliating conditions the Indian prisoners were kept there. If right now the international convention for the prisoners which are there, that
Yes.
do not endorse this kind of
Right.
prisoners to be kept there.
Yes, Mr. Ravi Bhatt, sorry to interrupt you there, sir, but if you could just help understand, like I said, the significance of the name Sri Vijaya Puram. Where exactly, how does that tie in with the Chola king Rajendra I?
See, Rajendra Chola, as we understand it, Chola was a great, the navy force also, and that is the reason they have chosen this place to make it their base basically. And the rest of the things, it is well known.
Okay, I want to bring in Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee into the conversation as well. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, crucial developments that are taking place. What do you make of the government's decision? The fact that not only have they decided to rename Port Blair as Sri Vijaya Puram, but they've also chosen a name that ties in very critically with Indian history, but particularly the history of the Chola Empire, which is, of course, south of India.
Devika, thank you for bringing me to your program. I actually am surprised that it took any government so many years after independence to change this name, because the name Port Blair symbolizes India's colonial heritage and the fact that we were reduced to serfdom from being a proud people and a proud empire and a proud civilization. Look at the date on which it was changed. 1778, 1779. Plassey happened in 1757. The process to reduce us to the position of colonial serfs began right from Plassey, when Bengal fell into the hands of the East India Company. After that, the East India Company, not being content with doing what it did in Bengal, spread its tentacles all over North India and then the South. As far as Port Blair is concerned, it's part of the entire process of trying to change India's history, India's name, and more than that, part of the process of making Indians lose confidence in themselves and making Indians forget their glorious past. Why do I say that? First of all, because the Chola Empire, Rajaraja Chola, the whole history of the South, was not even properly taught to Indians of my generation post-independence, because we were still looking at textbooks prepared by the British. How few Indians even knew in the North about the glories of the Chola Empire, about the fact that Sri Vijaya Puram symbolized India's outreach to the Far East, to various places where we left our unforgettable footprints in history. It was an attempt to erase our national history. Today is a very proud moment for us, and let us also not forget that the British later tried to make Andaman and Nicobar Islands into some kind of, not just a Kalapani, but a continuation of their policy of transportation. Earlier they used to send their work criminals to Australia, which was settled by descendants of criminals and convicts, and they tried to make Andaman Nicobar Islands into a place of horror. If you read what Veer Savarkar wrote in his book, in his autobiography, of what he felt about his prison set Port Blair and what hell it was for him, then any place which has been utilized to torture our freedom fighters and those who fought for our freedom, any place where Subhash Chandra Bose raised his first tricolour in defiance of the British Empire, should have been named decades ago. And I would like to congratulate the government of India and our Prime Minister for having taken this long-awaited step, which I am sure will go a long way to clear the mindset that still exists, unfortunately, in the minds of many Indians, both in India and outside, of the colonial mindset or of the feeling that somehow Goras are better than Indians. Not better than Indians.
Right.
And it's time that India woke up to the fact that the best will always remain the best. Devika.
Ambassador Mukherjee, at the same time, how does then India take this movement or sentiment forward? Because like you've also pointed out that there is a dark side to what the British were up to as far as the Andaman Nicobar Islands are concerned, but it's important for us to know all those aspects of history and to respect them and understand and learn from them, but at the same time also understand truly the significance of the Andaman Nicobar Islands from a strictly geographical perspective as well for India.
From a strictly geographical perspective, as our colleagues from the armed forces have told us, it is of great strategic importance. And that is precisely why the steps taken by the present government to improve the outreach of the Indian Navy so that we can fully defend all our assets, our territorial assets, and to defend ourselves against a neighbor that was earlier known to be a great land power and is now trying to become a great naval power. And therefore, in that context, one cannot overemphasize the importance of Andaman Nicobar Islands, which after all is not that far away from, let's say, Bali or Indonesia, etc. It's a great asset to us, but more than that, if it is such a great strategic asset, if it belongs to the Republic of India, my question is, why did it have this colonial name for so long? That's the reason for that, and that's the reason why, Devika, I wrote my book on indenture, is that India must not forget its colonial past, because if we do, then history can repeat itself. And how do we make Indians remember it? By teaching such things in school, so that young children, young Indians grow up knowing what happened in the British time, how these names were changed, what is the significance of Raja Raja Chola, what is the Great Chola Empire, who said that Indians did not have any naval footprint, who said that Indians are not capable of being a great naval power. We always were a great naval power. It was the British who tried later on to say that India never had any naval power. We were a great naval power under the Chola dynasty. But how do we make Indians remember it? We make Indians remember it, Devika, by beginning from where it all begins, in the minds of young Indians, so that they feel proud of themselves. And as far as those Indians are concerned who feel that Goras are more important than Indian civilization, I think, Devika, there really is nothing much that you and I can do about it.
Right, absolutely.
In 39 years in foreign service to change that mindset. I have succeeded to a certain extent, but I have to say with regret, I have not fully succeeded.
All right, I want to bring in Commander Dr. Bhushan Diwan on those aspects as well. Commander Dr. Bhushan Diwan, I want to understand from you, as Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee has also pointed out from a geographical perspective, the importance of the Andaman Nicobar Islands today. Perhaps most Indians are not even aware that the Andaman Nicobar Islands are geographically closer to, say, a Thailand or an Indonesia than to mainland India. And that really should help us understand the crucial location of the island nations. But at the same time, do you feel that it is also some sort of a messaging that is going out from the Indian government to rename Port Blair to Sri Vijaya Puram, basically linking it to one of the great historical conquests, naval conquests that took place? Commander Dr. Bhushan Diwan, can you hear me, sir? Okay, I'm going to take that same question with the Major General Brajesh Kumar then.
First of all, the Andaman and Nicobar group of islands, it has a formidable geostrategic importance. And more so that we are seeing in the present context, when you have issues with our northern neighbor for the last about 4 or 5 years. It transcends the major sea communication routes. Importantly for the China, the Malacca dilemma further to the east, the 8-degree and the 10-degree channel between the Andaman and Nicobar, we can play merry hell with our system. And therefore, rightly so, the governments of the day in India have made valuable military infrastructure contribution. We have imagined 4 airfields, naval and air force air bases in these locations. right from Diglipur in the north, that's the North Andaman, to bars in the southernmost part of Nicobar Islands, which is also known as the Indira Point, if viewers may recall. So therefore, it is a formidable place, and we are looking at it in the geostrategic scheme of things as of now. One reason, away from the messaging, is if China is agreeing to do a bit of thought, or possibly is our leverages which exercise in these areas. However, coming back to the other question, see, for example, the government has not suddenly named Port Blair as Sri Vijaya. It was very methodical in its action. Firstly, the three main islands close to it, Ross, Havelock, and the third one I'm forgetting, were named Shahid, Swaraj, and Netaji Subhash Chandra. Last year, January, the smaller islands were named after Paramveer Chakra Vijetas, 21 of them. So therefore, it is recreating the heritage of India, its glorious past, by these actions, so that it remains, it leaves an imprint in the minds of present day and the future generation, which is extremely, extremely crucial for our becoming a greater power in times to come. Having said that, not only this, our work to make this place a hub of tourists where the Indians, children, middle class, others can visit, are strengthening with military infrastructure, air bases, naval bases, and army outfits, making people aware of a destination as a tourism. So in the messaging is concerned, the government has been very, very forthright. It couldn't be doing better than that. People can travel on the LTCs the government employs to Port Blair and Andaman Island. So therefore, our focus in this area has been pronounced. Historical legacy, we are familiar with it. The government has gone about it in a very methodical fashion that we are aware of. And nicely, as I said in the beginning, we are trying to find our feet in Indochina, which with the Cholas did about 1,200 years ago. It is Indochina, not Chindia. Our influence, cultural and historical, are still there in Muslim majority largest state of Indonesia, as also in the other Southeast Asian states. So therefore, a very wise, very valid move by the government. It is not a sudden, it is not a springboard action. It's a well thought out, deliberate action to get our history, heritage, and trying to put a rising India onto the map, especially in the minds of its population.
Absolutely. I believe Commander Dr. Bhushan Dewan is also back with us on the broadcast. Commander Dr. Bhushan Dewan, can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Yes, unfortunately, we lost your connection there earlier, but I'd just like to understand from you, you've also heard what Major General Brijesh Kumar has had to say. As far as the renaming is concerned of Port Blair, the fact that it's happening during a renewed focus on the protection of the Indo-Pacific region as well, how do you view this development, and how do you view this move by the Indian government to reclaim India's history, specifically in the context of the conversations we've been having about the protection of the Indo-Pacific region?
It is indeed a remarkable move to establish our physical ownership and emotional ownership on these islands. These islands, they are the nearest international sea body with Indonesia is from Andaman Nicobar Islands. The nearest sea boundary for India is from Andaman Nicobar Islands with Thailand also. The point I'm making is it is a extremely important strategic asset, and this is now a union territory with almost 840 islands, out of which only about 30 islands are inhabited. As they say, what you don't use, you lose. What you don't use, you lose. It is true about human body also, true about island assets. The point is that the Vijayalaya, who was in 848 C, who was the Chola king, a very powerful Chola king, on his name this has been named. And it is time that if we have to own up emotionally these assets of ours, we have to get out of the British mentality, and this is a union territory. And this is the first headquarters of the strategic, of the Indian Port Blair Command, Inter-Service Command. Now we are talking about theatre commands, right? In the reorganization of armed forces. This is the first successful step for many years that Port Blair, Andaman Nicobar Islands has stood the test of time and proved how jointness between Army, Navy, Air Force can go ahead. And so indeed, the sea lines of communication. Navy's main role, primary role is to control sea lines of communication and deny them to the enemy. If China has to be kept in tow, if China has to be checkmated, their oil which passes through close to Andaman Nicobar Islands and then to Malacca Straits, it is a big watching post for us. That is the only way to checkmate China. And I think it's a right step, though it's a symbolic step, but this symbolic step can go a long way in boosting the morale and energy and sense of ownership and belonging. And so this is a very good step. And I think for India to be able to assert its presence as an emerging global power or Asian power has very well got to be significantly and visibly present in Andaman Nicobar Islands. And this is the first important symbolic step.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.